Sveiki visi. Ačiū, kad atėjote tuo pandeminiu laikotarpiu, surizikavote ateiti į diskusiją su mūsų labai garbinga viešne, Europos Parlamento pirmąja vicepirmininkė, ponia Roberta Metsola. Aš kalbu lietuviškai, todėl kad parlamentas labai didžiuojasi, kad visada dirba 23 oficialiom kalbom. Ir šiandien mūsų diskusija taip pat vyks 2 kalbom. Jūs esate Europos namuose, kurie čia pirmą kartą, čia įsikūrusios 3 Europos Sąjungos institucijos, tai yra Europos komisijos atstovybė, Europos parlamento biuras ir Europos lyčių lygybės institutas. Ir kadangi turim labai nedaug laiko, turim laiku pabaigti, iš karto paprašyčiau perimti žodį šios diskusijos moderatorių, profesorių politologą Mindaugą Jurkyną, kuris pristatys svečius ir pradės diskusiją.
Okay, hello everyone. I hope you don't mind that I'm sitting. I would say hello, usual suspects, but since you are in a mask, so I can hardly recognize you except some of the fellows. It's an honor and pleasure for me to moderate this session. My name, as it was said, is Mindaugas Jurkynas. I work at Vytautas Magnus University. And today we will be discussing different questions, political, economic, social, societal, related to different challenges and possible solutions of the European future. And it's an honor to have as one of our key guests here, Roberta Metsola, who is first Vice President of the European Parliament. At the same time, we will have another, let's say, mini keynote address of the deputy of the Lithuanian speaker, Radvile Morkūnaitė-Mikulėniene. She's also a chairwoman of the Committee of European Affairs. And I will remind you that for technical reasons, there is a direct broadcast, and it is available on the YouTube channel of the Lithuanian Parliament. It's called Atviras Seimas, Open Parliament, and it's also possible to see this direct broadcast on the Facebook account of the Office of the European Parliament in Lithuania. Okay, I will try to speak a bit slower as we have direct interpretation. So without much further ado, I think I would like to invite Radvile Morkūnaitė-Mikulėniene. She will, as far as I was informed, make her presentation online. So I guess that the technical gadgets are on and Radvile is here. Radvile, hello, do you read me? Yes, hi, I mean...
Hi, hello.
Yeah, fine. So the floor is yours. I already introduced you. Everybody knows who you are, and yeah, everybody is looking forward. You know? Our antennas have been pricked up.
Ačiū, sveiki visi. Thank you, Mindaugas, and good day to everyone who is participating in this first parliamentary dimension for the discussion for the future of the European Union. So I would call it in a way an inaugural session for the discussions here in Lithuania, where Seimas is involved. So thank you very much for that. And I'm really happy that today we have Vice President of the European Parliament together with us. Unfortunately, and it's my aching heart that I can't be together with you in the European House, because yeah, you can feel from my voice that I have some health challenges at the moment. But yeah, in these uneasy times when we have to deal with the pandemic, we have to be extra careful in order to cope with the challenges we have in the society as regards health and security. So I wanted to start most probably when speaking about future of Europe. And today, Roberta already raised the question whether this initiative is needed, and she said, of course it's needed. I know that there are lots of discussions among parliamentarians and representatives of member states that, maybe the structure of the whole initiative is too big, or nobody exactly knows what the outcome should be and what we wish for. And it might be that everything will stay the same, but nevertheless, we do not know what the outcome will be, but we have to put efforts, to say our point of view, to share our ideas, not only politicians, but of course the society and especially young generation, because you will have to live in the future of European Union and to create the life as you wish. And I think, the earlier you start to be involved in politics in this way, I would say that the politics not necessarily being a member of a certain parliament or the local council or whatever, but just to be involved in the matters that are around you and not to be indifferent. And I think that Roberta's example is a very good one, because I know her since she was active player in youth organization, and not only back home in Malta, but in European youth organizations. So I think the earlier you start, the more you achieve in order to represent your voters, in order to represent your ideas. So I think that it's extremely important to provide instruments for young generation to be involved, to strengthen NGO sector, to strengthen youth political organizations, that they would be involved in the matters as soon as possible from the very early age. And I think that in this case, you can achieve more as a society. And today there will be lots of themes, I think, tackled upon, and I would wish more to hear than to speak, more to listen than to speak. And of course, pandemia, migration, human rights. I would tackle this green agenda, which is facing sort of fatigue, most probably, and especially in young generation eyes, which would like to have more quick results, and especially when we feel ourselves, not that scientists tell us, about some changes in the climate, but we feel ourselves, extreme weathers, floods, fires, and all those things that are related to changing climate, and that the human beings are responsible for that. So I think we will tackle these themes, and I'm extremely interested in what Roberta has to say, and all of you who are participating in this debates. Hopefully it will be a good input for the conference for European future. Thank you.
Thank you, Radvile, and we wish you, all the best. Hope that all the challenges that your health faces will soon go away, whatever it is. I think that I should also mention that there is a program for the listeners, either in Lithuanian, because we have interpretation, or in English. The program is called slide.do, so you can raise your questions, and if these questions pop up on my screen, I can read them loudly, and then it's an opportunity to answer. I was wondering if anybody would like to have a quick reaction maybe to what has been said. It's not necessary, of course. It maybe sounded more like a more welcome address rather than a presentation. And I guess that the headliner, Roberta Metsola, is here, and then she will provide us key ideas on the challenges, I reckon, and maybe some solutions. I'll just mention that Roberta is not only the first vice president of the European Parliament, but also the member of the EPP faction. And this is the fourth term at the third term at the Parliament. So it's a vast political experience. And I guess we are all ears. So the floor is yours, Roberta. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mindaugas. Thank you for being here to discuss with me and my colleagues, messages that I would like to take back with me, and also to answer any questions that you have. I'm here not in Vilnius for the first time. I have been here actually very often when I was younger as a youth activist, because my country joined the European Union on the same day as Lithuania did, and we were a very, very good active group all those many years ago that used to travel across those countries in order to try to convince people who were not yet convinced as to whether their country would join the European Union, what that implied, what were the advantages, what were things to look out for, what were things to be aware of. And in a sense, I still think I do a little bit of that. Now I am elected. I've been elected since 2013. So as you said, this is my third mandate in the European Parliament. A little bit about me. I come from Malta. I am married to a Finn, and I have 4 children. All boys. I am a lawyer by profession, and I specialized in European law. In the European Parliament, I have spent most of my time dealing with issues that are extremely sensitive, whether they were migration, with regards to crisis or threats, as we perhaps will discuss at the moment with you in this meeting, or discuss long-term planning, are the type of laws that we need to write in order to make sure that we do not wait for the next crisis in order to realize that we are still without any framework that would help us solve an issue that is at any one country's external border of the European Union. Lithuania's border today is the border of the European Union, and therefore this is something that we all need to be responsible for and address challenges in its regard. I also spend a lot of my time dealing with rule of law matters, which is investigating and concerns that are perhaps perpetrated by certain governments against fundamental values that we were brought up to believe were taken for granted, that we fought hard, that those values and principles and structures were put in place before the countries joined the European Union, only then to realize that there's no mechanism to make sure that they continue to be respected once those countries enter the European Union. So we have spent a lot of our time actually engaging with people from a lot of member states who express their concerns and look to Europe actually to address them. And the most common thing will be, we joined the European Union because we thought we would have protection. We joined the European Union because we thought we could have a voice that is stronger. Why is this not happening? Why is this voice not strong enough? What is the background work that is going in? So I spend a lot of my time in corridors negotiating these sensitive points, not only within my political group, but most importantly across the different political groups in the European Parliament. Majorities in the European Parliament are only possible when different groups get together. And you spend most of your time as a member speaking in the corridors, looking where common points are, where points of contention remain, in order to deliver something at the final vote. Now, I think, message would be, and in these events I spend quite a lot of time going to different countries, speaking at these events, is to try to encourage all of you to make your voices heard. Now, this might sound like, yeah, of course I make my voice heard. I pass a comment underneath an article, or I decide, you know, to abstain from voting because I disagree with voting, or why should I bother because all politicians are the same, or will my vote make a difference? And my message here today to you is to say, actually, no, it does make a difference, because you will be playing a part in choosing those individuals who will take decisions on your behalf, and those decisions need to be effective for your life, need to improve your life, need to make it better for you to understand what your rights are, or make sure that the obligations that are owed to you are actually observed. different issues at the moment that are being discussed. I flew in from Estonia last night, and I spent this morning, I met with your Prime Minister and then the Speaker of the House of Parliament, and now a number of committees in the European Parliament. Radvile gave us already a little bit of a taste of what was discussed. Now I will speak with you, and I would like you to ask as many questions as possible, please. Feel free, and nothing is off limits in this room with me, because that's what I think our discussion should be about. And then in the afternoon, I will be visiting the border with Belarus, and I will be meeting with border guards on the ground, and I will also be meeting with the representatives of the Belarusian opposition in the next few hours in order to also discuss the situation in that regard. My message has been also today that the European Parliament stands completely with Lithuania in addressing its various challenges. One that we've just mentioned, of course, the hybrid threat that we are seeing across the border of people being pushed into Lithuania. 2, respect for human rights. 3, rising energy prices. 4, is the Green Deal going to lead with its extremely welcome, ambitious targets? How can we make sure that we don't have parts of Europe that become poorer as a result, that are left even more behind, that we create these 2 types of European countries, geographically, territorially, politically led, etc. So all these issues are factoring into this broad discussion that we are having on the conference on the future of Europe. A lot of words, but ultimately this is about a dialogue that we are having in order to see where do you want Europe to go. Have mistakes been made? Will mistakes still be made? Have the right choices been made? And how can we avoid repetition of those? But how can we make sure that we are best prepared on a global stage, on a national stage, on a European stage, to be with this European project and our vision that brought us all here in this room in the first place, to push into making a meaningful difference in everybody's lives.
Okay. Thank you, Roberta. By profession, I'm political scientist, actually by specialization. It's both a curse and a blessing. The blessing because you study different areas in the European Union. European studies is one of my fields of expertise. And the curse is that then you have too many questions, and you know that they can be answered from very different political angles. So I was just wondering if you will be answering from the EPP position, the personal position, or on the behalf of the European Parliament.
I will give you all of them.
Okay, all 3 perspectives, that's fine.
If they are different. If not, I will give you one.
Yeah, they can coincide and overlap.
Absolutely.
But first of all, I tried the program, Slido, it works. I was called Anonymous, so my question is there. But maybe somebody among the audience would like to raise a certain question or come with a comment. You just, raise your hand or, any other sign of bodily recognizable function, and then I will immediately address you. And while you're thinking, I will read the question. So there is one question, not only mine actually, which says, should we expect a new European Union treaty after the end of the Conference of Europe, or reforms are possible in other ways? So let me translate that. So I guess it's very similar like in the mid-2000s when there was the European Conference and there was European Constitution, which was turned down by the French and the Dutch voters, which in these referenda actually were not much about the Constitution, but about the but the national governments. So is now the same situation that we are slowly stepping forward a new European Union treaty, which would, well, when was the Lisbon Treaty? 2009, right?
2007,
yeah, and then became valid since 2009. So is here a high time for a new treaty, you think, or do the mechanisms in the European Union allow to tackle a number of challenges that you listed up with the existing treaty? What do you think? What's your take?
Well, I was very closely involved with the negotiation of the Lisbon Treaty because I was the legal expert for my government. And as a lawyer, of course, I would be able to say, yes, I can't wait for us to be able to reopen the treaty and negotiate. But I think as a politician today and a representative, I would say the most important thing at this stage is to put the fundamental questions on the table. The minute we start talking about shall we open that chapter or that title, shall we move from unanimity to qualified majority vote, shall we try to reduce the introductory part, shall we move on defense, shall we try to do what happened last time where not all countries get a commissioner at the same time, do we remove or at least move towards more federalist union and less, I'd say before we do all of that, I think we need to discuss what our priorities are. And in my experience, for a lot of the priorities that we have, for a lot of the challenges that we have on the table, nothing in the treaty prevents us from doing that. If anything, the reality is the opposite. That we have the tools in our hands, we have the tools to effect change, we have the tools to adopt a new migration legislation, we have the tools to make sure that fiscally our member states are on track. Last year, I think we stretched the powers of the Union to such a limit when we approved an unprecedented amount of funds in the context of the Recovery and Resilience Facility and the Next Generation EU program, in order to make sure that our countries and our economies can recover after the pandemic. We had the fastest approval ever of the digital COVID certificate, of making sure that when the vaccines needed to be licensed because they kept being tweaked in order to combat the new variants, we passed legislation in order to do that. The Parliament was on track, was on the front of the fight and said we can find solutions. What I think is our biggest challenge is that we decide to ignore those solutions and use and refrain from having the political will and leadership to effect change. I'll give you an example. In the field of migration, let's talk about this. The concept of a frontline member state. Over many years, we used to think, okay, it was the northern Mediterranean countries, people coming in, fleeing war, persecution, finding a better life, seeking a better life, leaving sub-Saharan Africa, making their way over many years at great peril through North African countries, getting on the boat, facing an almost certain death, arriving in Europe, applying for asylum, either being given asylum, not being given, and therefore waiting to be returned. We have been for years saying that there is the need to update that legislation. That when we negotiated the Lisbon Treaty, we made a specific decision to include the word solidarity in that chapter. Nowhere else. In that chapter, there was a specific reference to the word solidarity. We have laws that have been proposed. Legal basis is there, no need to question it. You can adopt that legislation with a majority. No need for unanimity. This is not foreign policy. This is not tax. This is not family law. Qualified majority. But not one presidency of the European Union has taken the decision to allow for a majority vote. Now you might tell me, yes, you know, there is a lack of political will, there are elections in that country, so don't take any decisions now. The next presidency is not willing to take it up. But at the end of the day, you can change all the treaties you want. But if there is the situation where, because two countries say, you know, this issue is too far away from me, so I will exonerate myself from responsibility over it. And at the same time, let's throw money at the problem. The minute we talk about human beings, we'll look away. You can have all the treaties, you just won't manage. So at the moment, what I'm hoping for and what we are seeing is a new impetus, also because of the situation that is ever evolving tragically in Afghanistan and the people fleeing the regime there, as to what we will do in the immediate term agreements with countries in the region in order to protect the most vulnerable, women and children, teachers, judges who are fleeing. Are we prepared for an influx? In 2015, we said never again. It's 2021. We've had laws, we've put them to the Council and Parliament. They've been blocked. So you need political will, and political will comes from being around the table and saying now's the time to act, because otherwise this is a challenge that everybody needs to shoulder, and the responsibility that everybody needs to uphold. And I think the momentum is now, and there is an effort, and we will be at the forefront in the Parliament to push for that.
Okay, great. Just a quick reminder, maybe some of you might not be familiar with the decision-making procedures in the European Union. So the very, very general line, except several areas, European Commission proposes the draft of the law, and this draft of the law must be approved both by the European Parliament and by the Council of the European Union, where the ministers sit. So in general, without the European Parliament, you can't have law in general. But if I am allowed to crack a joke, the former German Chancellor Otto von Bismarck once said, and you may know that joke, correct me if I'm wrong, that it's better not to know how sausages are made and how laws are adopted, which means there are a lot of dirty compromises. And since you mentioned the political, well, every country, politicians has a certain political calculations, and sometimes they might look dirty from other countries' perspective. Anyway, I see that the questions are flocking in, and maybe I'll take a couple of them, and since we have more people on my list to speak up, I hope that I'll just check it out. You know, like at school, we have the President of the Council of Lithuanian Youth Organizations, Mr. Lukas Kornelijus Vaičiakas. Are you here? Yes? Hello, as I said, without the masks. So that's my lame excuse, but it is an excuse. Then we have Vytis Jurkynas. I know you fella very well. And also the Deputy President of Lithuanian Confederation of Industrialists, Mantas Gutas. There you are. Okay, so everybody is here. Cool. But having said that, we move to another question. And the question concerns actually Nord Stream 2 and gas prices. Maybe it's not much of your field expertise, but you're familiar with the matter as a sensitive area. The question sounds like that. Is the increase of gas prices in Europe related to Russia and to Nord Stream 2 in particular, which started its operations? So, to translate it, is Russia behind the increase of the current hike of the gas prices? I mean, what's the political take in the European Parliament on this issue?
Well, it is a take that is in every country of the European Union. So this is a subject that is being raised. It is of concern. Winter is coming, bills are high already, and the forecast is that they will get higher. How do we, let's say, discuss, while at the same time discussing how we are going to diversify our energy dependence, what fuels we use, where they come from, whether they come directly from Russia or through another country that gets them from Russia, this is another question, and where in the negotiations that are currently being discussed as to what the targets of countries such as yours and mine are, when was the base year taken? In other words, was there a lot of Russian activity at the time? Since then, there has been a decrease in terms of waste, and therefore now the targets are disproportionately higher for countries like yours. So that's a discussion that we need to broach, because this, unless your country is and the individual situation that is faced or was faced historically and over the last 20 years evolved, is understood by other countries, there will be a whole, as you said, cacophony of voices. Votes in the Council need to be bolstered by larger countries in order to form, in the eventuality, blocking minorities, as we call it. But somebody from Portugal might not understand the immediate situation and the reason. Is it due to Russia? Yes, I've been hearing actually that there are voices that are blaming the rising gas prices on the Green Deal. On the Green Deal, on the proposal. Why? Because it's in the interest of mixing a situation of a legislation that has just been tabled, which means nothing has been even discussed yet, in order to hide behind the fact that prices are rising. Are they public prices? There's a Nordic pool, you know, so prices are publicly, I mean, gas is bought on the public market. So things prices are being driven up, and the narrative on the Nord Stream actually drives them up because of the implications of its existence, of its operation, and who is pushing that narrative. So that's those are the parameters that we discuss when we're trying to combat either the discourse that the price is going up, why it's going up, and whether it will still go up. There's also a discussion as to whether, because the prices have gone up, do we have to use dirtier fuels? Restart to use plants that have not been in use a lot recently. And the reason why, because it's cheaper to produce, and therefore governments would be more inclined to be able to buy from that, of that type of fuel in order to try to keep the prices down. So my answer to you would be that all those questions are, they are not mutually exclusive. There is also another argument that because of the carbon border adjustment mechanism and the emissions trading scheme, that what the governments can do in order to perhaps narrow the tax bracket on how much you pay on your fuel is more limited. And there are some countries that ignore that and some countries that stick to it. And there is also, in fact, a question that was put to me: what about those countries whose governments subsidize fuel producers, making them more competitive on the market in other parts of Europe, not in this part? How can we engage in developing new technologies, new fuel, new transport methods, if we are automatically at a disadvantage because other governments are subsidizing? So these are all questions that not only should be asked, but should be even put on the table when negotiating how these new packages of legislation will impact each and every single country, and sometimes not only every single country, parts of the country specifically that have an even larger dependence on specific fuels that need to be phased out. That when they look at the targets, okay, we need to, by in X amount of years, phase out all the cars that operate on current fuels. The question is, what am I going to do? You know, how can I afford it? And this is a fundamental point that is being made, what will the cushion be in order to protect those persons who will be disproportionately effective by these measures? And then a big question is, Europe is a leader, and it should be. It's good to be ambitious. I need to explain to my children why I have not done enough yet in terms of pushing forward these ambitious goals that we saw this summer. Climate was the first topic on a lot of our agendas because of the changes that we have seen climatically. But the question then becomes, happens in my country, okay, we will observe all the laws and reach the targets, but our neighbors are not bound by them. There are no borders when we talk about climate. How are we going to balance that? Can it be used in order for us to be even weaker or destabilize us politically? Oh. So these are all, I mean, I answered your question with many questions, but it's an evolving discussion that we need to have in order, first of all, to combat propaganda and misinformation, and actually put politicians on the spot to answer the questions that you're asking. Listen, I mean, why is this like this? Why is this happening? Why do we? And sometimes you get, but people say, so the government has said, I can't do anything about it. But if you're the government, what do you mean? Who else is going to do something about it? So that's also a question that we get put when we're in this narrative of it's the fault of the European Union, or no, it's not the fault of the European Union. If it's good, it's our credit. If it's bad, it's the European Union's fault. So we get a lot of that, and we need to be prepared to answer the questions that are put to us.
Okay, well, I'll just react very quickly, playing the devil's advocate, and then we'll go to the other presentations. First of all, let's look at the political map. The Green parties do not dominate, so the Green is over-exaggerated as the issue. Otherwise, the Green parties would be running most of European countries. That's one thing.
See what happens on Sunday in Germany.
Yeah. Well, not sure. Well, maybe in the coalition with the Social Democrats. Yes. Let's see if we believe the opinion polls. The second question is when we look at the Green Deal and economy-related issues, it comes to competition. Green Deal definitely requires more investments and might make many of the services and the goods produced more costly. But the countries compete worldwide. Say, if Americans, Chinese, Indians, South Koreans do not switch to the green, so they will have a competitive edge without going to the Green Deal. And we will be shooting in our feet. And that will backlash in lost jobs, in uncompetitive goods, and in losing the markets. So what would your response be? Ambition is fine. I mean, that's why I said I'm playing the devil's advocate here. But these are very, very correct arguments. And if you look at the Paris Agreement on the climate change, very, very few countries actually stuck to it. So it means that we obligate ourselves in the European Union to go green, become more costly, less competitive, the high prices, consumers are not satisfied, competitive edge is lost, and what do we do about that? So very briefly, if it's possible, because then we go to the other people. I know it's impossible, but...
Thank you for that. Yeah. Okay, so first of all, I think that the mistake we've made is that we've looked at the environment and the economy as though they were two distinct pillars. Exactly. When we talk about the circular economy, it's because we really believe that you can actually impact the environment while the economy continues to grow. That you can create new jobs, new technologies, new research areas. We saw last week that there are research in Poland and already uses trains using hydrogen to move. Local technology being done here. Let's invest in our universities to make sure. My sisters are both academics. They both depend on such funds in order to create and invest in younger people in order to create more new types of jobs that will impact positively on our environment. You do not need only green parties to do that. You need to have pro-European, economically driven understanding of the role of private investment, public support. There, I think we can shift our focus to only thinking of them in two different silos. But when you said we will see China and India, whatever, I would encourage you to read a book called The Brussels Effect. It was written by a Columbia law professor called Anu Bradford. She's Finnish, actually, originally. I know her personally, but she has written, from a trade perspective, the impact of ambitious European legislation on manufacturing lines outside the European Union. So when we took the big decisions a few years ago in order to upgrade our cars, our vehicles, our technology in terms of products that we expect, standards, those countries had no choice but to use the same standards that we had, because we are the largest market. We are the largest consumers for them. So if we turn it around and say, yes, we are competitive, but we can also set standards that because we are world leaders, other emerging economies that produce will have to come in line. There was a moment, in fact, when car producers, for example, had two manufacturing lines, one for European cars, one for non-European cars, because the standards were lower. But that had to change because it was not economically feasible. So now every car in the world that is produced in those plants have the same standards everywhere. That is thanks to the European Union. Let's not lose sight of the fact that we can be leaders in standards and push regulation to match ours. Now, is it easy? Of course not. With trade, you can deal, but we have to also think about the longer term and the real perspective that ultimately the biggest impact on climate and the world is human behavior, and it has to start with us.
Okay, good. So I guess I'll give the floor to Mr. Vachekas, and yeah, you have the microphone, so I know you speak English or in Lithuanian there's an interpretation, so up to you. You don't have to stand, I mean, you can sit, I guess. You can draw the chair next to me.
Stovėsiu čia, viskas tvarkoj.
Okay.
Labadiena, labai smagu ir gera čia būti šiomis pandeminėmis sąlygomis ir smagu čia atėjus matyti tos pačius veidus, kurios matėm prie kompiuterio ekrano matyti čia. Labai smagu, kad tiek ir vicepirmininkė, tiek ir Radvile Morkūnaitė-Mikulėniene daug kalbėjo savo kalbose apie jaunimą, apie jaunimo įgalinimą ir kad jų karjera, jei galima taip sakyti, prasidėjo jaunimo organizacijų. Tai džiaugiuosi tik tą galimybę, kad galiu čia būti ir kalbėti. Ir apie jaunimo klausimus kalbame pakankamai simbolišką dieną, kai vakar nacionalinis parlamentas priartėjo dar šiek tiek arčiau įgalinant jaunus žmonės, sudarant galimybės kandidatuoti į nacionalinį parlamentą nuo 21 metų. Liko dar vienas balsavimas, bet tikrai artėjame prie dar vienos galimybės įgalinti jaunus žmonės. Pirmą kartą mes apie konferenciją dėl Europos ateities pradėjome kalbėti dar šių metų vasarį, kai nusprendėme, kad vis dėlto nereikia laukti jokių kvietimų, kada patys galėsime, kada būsime pakviesti kalbėti apie Europos Sąjungos ateitį, kadangi mes patys save laikome jaunimą ne Lietuvos ateitimi ar Europos ateitimi, o dabartimi. Tai kartu su visomis Lietuvos jaunimo organizacijomis ir europiečių judėjimų Lietuvoje rengėme rezoliuciją dėl Europos Sąjungos ateities, kurį skiriame keletą skirtingų klausimų. Tai pradėsiu galbūt nuo to, kad žaliasis kursas yra tas kursas, kurį palaiko Lietuvos jaunimas. Pačios Lietuvos jaunimo organizacijos rodo tą gerąjį pavyzdį, atsisakydamos ar plastiko naudojimo savo renginiuose, ar naudodamos žalią elektrą savo organizacijų veikloje. Labai svarbu kalbėti ir apie skaitmenizacijos politiką, ypatingai šiame kontekste, kai mes Lietuvoje susidurėme ir matome, kad švietimo sistema galbūt yra ne visai pasiruošusi pilnai hibridiniam darbui, tai bendrai kalbėti tiek vietos lygmenių, tiek tarptautinių lygmenių apie skaitmenizacijos politiką yra būtina. Pradėjome kalbėti apie bendrą sveikatos politiką, galbūt apie bendrą pandemijos valdymo biurą ir...
Gal truputį lėčiau, kad vertimas būtų gerai.
Apie bendrą sveikatos politiką ir metinėje kalboje Ursula von der Leyen jau paminėjo, kad tai bus kuriama ir džiaugiamės, kad, žinoma, ne nuo mūsų tai atsirado, bet džiaugiamės, kad mes irgi galėjome šiek tiek iš anksto apie tai kalbėti. Yra daugybė platformų, kaip mes galime įgalinti jaunus žmonės, tiek veikiant Lietuvoje, tiek ir Europos parlamente, tiek ir kitais tarptautinėmis lygmenimis. Ir tas patirtis, kurias taiko Europos parlamentas, kaip apie nemokamų praktikų atsisakymą, lauksime, kada apie tai pradės kalbėti ir nacionalinis parlamentas bei kitos Europos Sąjungos valstybės. Bet šioje vietoje mes tikrai turime skirti didelį dėmesį kovai su padariniais, su kuriais susidūrėme po pandemijos, dar pandemijos sąlygomis. Ir nuo pirmųjų dienų, kai politikai kalbėjo, kad vyresnio amžiaus žmonės yra labiausiai nukentėję nuo pandemijos, mes atkreipėme dėmesį, kad ne mūsų senjorai, ne mūsų tėvai yra labiausiai nukentėję nuo pandemijos ar pandemijos kontekste, bet būtent jauni žmonės, kurie nežinojo, kaip reaguoti, nežinojo, kaip prisitaikyti prie pasikeitusios situacijos ir tiek išaugę užimtumo, negauto užimtumo skaičiai, tiek nedarbo skaičiai Europos Sąjungos lygmenių, tiek Europoje, parodo, kad tikrai yra privalomi imtis būtinų priemonių tiek nacionalinių lygmenių, tiek ir Europos Parlamento lygmenyse, nes vienu metu Lietuva buvo 4. Europos Sąjungos lygmenių pagal jaunimo nedarbą ir teko tikrai visiems suremti pečius, kad būtų galima tą problemą išspręsti. Bet vienu ir kitu atveju mūsų organizacijos nuomonė, o mes vienėm 70 jaunimo ir su jaunimu dirbančių organizacijų, didžiausia problema yra jaunimo psichinė sveikata. Ir čia tikrai nepakanka vien nacionalinio parlamento dėmesio, nacionalinių institucijų dėmesio, bet tikrai privalo reaguoti ir Europos parlamentas, numatant priemonės ir galimybės, kaip būtų galima spręsti šį klausimą. Gal sveikatos klausimai nėra tie, su kuriais dirba daugiausiai Europos parlamentas, bet kuriuo atveju čia yra kritinė situacija ir priemonės privalo būti, šių priemonių dėl psichinės sveikatos privalo imtis visos institucijos, visos struktūros nedelsint. Ačiū.
Thank you very much. I got a message that the Deputy Speaker of the Parliament, Radvile, would like to chime in. So I guess I would like to give her floor to react. Radvile, you're on.
Thank you very much, Mindaugas. I just wanted to react to that point made regarding possible treaty changes or how we perceive as politicians or maybe the society in a broader sense the future of Europe in terms of should it be, more as should we have more of Europe or should we stay, as some would wish, union of national states? So me personally, I'm very pro-European and I wish to have more Europe, and our political party represents these views, but I understand that it's quite complicated. If we go, as Roberta said, we have to ask ourselves the question, what we want to achieve. And for example, this unanimity or qualified majority votes, yes? So on one issues, for example, regarding Russia, Belarus, or as for us it's extremely important foreign policy, foreign affairs policy. So in this matter, we would like to have unanimity. And maybe, to hope to qualified majority in order to, to achieve results faster or adopt some, ideas faster. But we perfectly understand that if there would be some other kind of question, maybe, each state wouldn't be so happy about having these qualified majorities on, I don't know, some social aspects or whatever. So this is one thing. The other thing, how much we are ready, to have more Europe in our life as regards, for example, social affairs. And we had already discussion about the minimum wage salary in the European Union, not to have it common and the same in all member states, but to have the same calculation mechanism, so to say. And it was very heated up debates in our parliament, and one were looking more to industry side, the others to the employees side, and the goal seems very generous, like, if we are together in this union, everybody has to be under the same umbrella and get the same benefits. But on the other hand, talking about competitiveness, so this is the other question, are all countries equal, and are all countries ready for the same challenges? So I think it's very complicated issue as regards, whether the European Union is ready to change treaties or to move more into the spheres where European Union would regulate more of our lives. By heart, I would say, yes, we are ready for that. And what Roberta is saying, that it's the momentum, of course it is. But on the other hand, it's quite complicated, I think, to agree on all those spheres what we wish to really achieve. And one of the things our dear colleague Manfred Weber, my former colleague and Roberta's current colleague in the European Parliament, he was our leader in the European Parliament elections. He wanted to raise this issue, how to combat cancer in the European Union. Is it possible to unite all the forces we have on the capabilities we have in order to deal with this disease? And I think this is a good initiative in order to take closer people to the European Union and to the decisions that make European Union. But I think in this case, COVID-19 did this job in order that the citizens would be more proud of the European Union, because we perfectly understand that being alone in this fight, we won't be that successful as we are now. So some things already are working very, very well. As for future, there are different aspects which I am afraid that it would be too complicated to agree on for everybody in this exercise, which is called Future for Europe. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Radvile. And I actually had wanted to say that Radvile had served her stint as the member of the European Parliament, but she had mentioned that herself, so she has that experience and combines her political attitudes not only with ideology, but also with the experience, institutional memory, both at the European Parliament and currently now at Lietuvos Seimas. I guess we could go further according to the list and then see how much time we have. Do you have a very quick question or comments? Or let's do the following. As a moderator, let's give the floor to people who are on the list, and after they speak, we'll pick up the questions. There is a number of questions there, and there are, of course, live questions here. So you'll be first in the line now. So I'll give the floor to Vytis Jurkynas, who is the head of Freedom House division here in Vilnius, covering Lithuania and Belarus, right?
Belarus,
okay.
And basically Eastern neighborhood countries. Anyway, I'm wearing two hats. Also, I'm an academic at the Vilnius University, a hybrid person in a good sense. What I wanted to raise, I think that what I'm missing in the EU generally is the lack of confidence in terms of what Europe is and what the fundamentals and basis of the EU are. This is human rights and democracy. It's usually a priority number 6, number 7, not number 1. Like you mentioned a lot of topics: economy, migration, climate change, I mean, even national security, if you will. And I think it's all interconnected, because if we look into neighboring Belarus, right, I think it's a litmus paper in terms of our ambition and our muscle, how we are exercising human rights and democracy. I mean, Belarus, no doubt, is not a super strong, wealthy country with natural resources. We understand that it's not. And if we are not determined in terms of like our position on Belarus, not only resolutions, not only shaking hands with the Belarusian opposition, saying "Živie Belarus," you know, and expressing this solidarity, showing selfies, but actually not only declaring sanctions, but actually implementing them. I mean, many aspects on that. I think that it's a litmus paper, and that should be a priority number 1 in terms of the foreign affairs. How are we addressing this? There are no cheap things in Europe. When you talked about energy, when we talk about economy, be it gas, be it, I mean, look into Russia, it's like all the environmental disasters in Norilsk, burning Yakutia, and all of that. We understand that it comes from the lack of democracy and human rights, because it's connected with exploitation. If you don't have rule of law, You are exploiting people, you are exploiting nature, so democracy and human rights should be at the very core of what in our foreign affairs and domestic affairs, leading by example. So I think we shouldn't be asking, you know, for more money, more financial support. If we were determined in our foreign affairs at all aspects, you know, economy, let's put tariff on the dirty products, on the dirty raw material and all of that. Let's sanction bad people for real, so we would be protecting ourselves. If we are not mindful of what is happening in our neighboring countries in terms of democracy and human rights, people would be migrating. There are 100,000 people from Belarus running from the repressions in Belarus. That's already a burden to the neighboring countries. And on top of that, country which is not accountable to its people, not to international standards, it's throwing the migrants from the Middle East to us as well, and it's becoming an additional burden. So if we were very genuine and very determined in democracy and human rights at our foreign affairs, that would be a lesser problem than at home. If we are ignorant, then it comes to our home and it becomes an issue of our national security, a financial burden, and so that would be not question, but rather a comment, an addition to what you've said. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Vyti. And last but not least, we have the representative from the Lithuanian Confederation of Industrialists, Mr. Mantas Gudas. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Lithuanian Confederation of Industrialists represents 4,000 industrial companies in the country, and most of them, they are regional. So the problems the industry faces, actually, it's very familiar and discussed many times. But few topics regarding this. Actually, one example: when people are participating in a party, they behave a little bit differently. If you are paying for the party expenditures, if you're not. So we are those who are paying for the party, and actually the perspective of the old discussions, what we have, it has a bit another time perspective. So it's shorter, it's more painful sometimes, and it's of course have relationship to a lot of people, to family members, and so on. Yes. Migration policy, what we have exactly in Lithuania, we are facing very interesting time now, where this balance of unemployed people and people are searched in the market, free labor places. It's maybe in the record heights. We have about 200,000 unemployed people, and maybe about 30,000 people free job places offered, and there's a mismatch, huge mismatch, which costs a big amount of money of taxpayers, of governmental incomes, and so on. The solutions, the companies are become very creative in this field, and actually they are establishing own academies and universities. They are trying to transfer the education and the skills that people have after universities, especially young people, to transform to the skills what the industry actually needs. You know, when we talk about robotics, automatization, engineering, and all the skills. And probably it's one direction we are recommending, and we see it's to move the education more from universities more to the industry. Because in this way we can save a lot of time, and it's very I think the future thing when we talk about global competitiveness. Another thing is I'm representing also the industry from fifth biggest city, Panevėžys, which actually is a very industrial city. With a lot of traditional industry, but we, during the discussion about the strategy of the city in municipality, business council, and other institutions, local institutions, we found one focus that all the future of the cities, in Europe, in Lithuania, they are around young people. If the city has no young people, it's not attractive to live and to work into the city, so city is dying. And we are facing this very directly. So the city council, municipality, and business, they trying to unite all the programs, all the common efforts about the young families and young people. Creating the jobs, trying to make attractive environment, good place to live, that also clean place to live, attractive, global, interesting, and modern. I think this combination, business, young people, it's very, I think, important direction. But in a short term, probably all the industry is speaking more and more loudly in Lithuania that migration policy has to be changed. And maybe the suggestion or maybe the question is why should we not follow the good examples in the world when the countries have the green card policy, which actually is not a lottery, but probably it's a hidden and very concentrated strategy how to attract those people who you miss. And when we see Lithuanian demographic curve, what we have, it's probably majority of the people working in the industry now is between 55 and 60. So after 5 years or 15 years, they will be gone. And then not all the robotics, not the robots will change them. We also, so they need new people who will be ready to create, to create the future of the Europe.
What industry is it mostly?
Mostly, actually, we see the trend that all the robotics and automatics is moving to the hubs of the industry in Europe. Mainly, it's Germany. So if you have a factory working without people at all, just only robots, it's very important. All logistics, just it has to be close to the end customers, and such a smaller countries, or maybe new members of European Union, relatively new, it's like Baltics, like a Poland. So they are probably has to be concentrated on another business models except robotic. I think that's a reason why we can explain why in Lithuanian level of robotics it's maybe 10 times less than Germany. It's because of logistics. It's because of being not maybe the most suitable place in the market. So and we have to. That's why we have a need more for this labor, not a labor, but for the human capital, for the people, educated people, IT engineers, the people who are creating, but okay, not robotics. Maybe one more point about green economy. It's we also have concrete industry. We have glass industry. In Lithuania we're not, but we have also in Europe the mill industry, which are very CO2 consuming. And it's very important, of course, to do transformation in those sectors, but also extremely important also to think about competitiveness. And actually, Mindaugas stole the question of mine. There's a when we talk about the global competitiveness, we have huge advantage. How to stay competitive in short term. In the long term, yes, Roberta, you're absolutely right, about those cars. This example, this is new changes and it's coming, but short term. So you need a lot of money actually to transform the mill to another technology to avoid CO2 totally. And as far as I know, so there is technology how to make zero CO2 emission in steel mills, but it's extremely costly. And in short term, to accumulate those money, either the end customer or industry has to pay, either they have to pay subsidies, and that's why when we talk about green economy, we need to go a bit deeper and to have brighter view what we would like to achieve. Do we have to have industry in European Union at all? Or maybe our policies concentrate and just to say, okay, let's close the factory and it's a cheaper and we go this direction. So it's about that. And I'm also pro-European very much. And sometimes I think strategically from the praxis, when you have very big question, who are, where we would like to go, I think it's very useful to do not try to find one single answer. No. I think the answer consists from very simple tasks and solutions. You can this very complex question to convert to very simple few answers, maybe 20 of them, maybe 30 of them, but those has to be very clearly understandable from all people and from this puzzle. So I think what Europe is. So in my opinion. And thank you.
Right.
Okay, thank you, Manti. I know that there are a couple of questions coming up, so if you could just introduce yourself. Everybody who speaks introduces himself or herself, so here is a person, and could anyone, or you could just come to the mic, please.
Diena visiems, aš esu Richardas Garuolis, Lietuvos profesinės sąjungos solidarumas generalinis sekretorius. Ir aš stengsiuosi lėčiau kalbėti, kad išverstų mūsų gerbiamai viešniai. Ir du klausimai. Pirmas klausimas, kokia yra šiuo metu parlamente padėtis, Europos parlamente, svarstant minimalios algos direktyvą. Ir kitas klausimas apie kada Europos parlamente bus įvesti taršos mokesčiai trečiosioms šalims, kurios įveža nešvarios energijos produkciją. Pavyzdžiui, Lietuva dabar perka didžiąją dalį elektros iš Rusijos, Baltarusijos, kadangi jinai pigesnė, o pigesnė dėl to, kad yra mažesni aplinkosauginiai reikalavimai. Ir ką Baltarusio svečias sakė, tai tas vyksta, o Lietuva, kadangi vykdo tuos klimato kaitos ir kitus aplinkosauginius reikalavimus, ji nekonkurencinga ir jau uždarė didžiąją dalį savo energetikos gamybos. Ir dar norėčiau pakomentuoti čia truputį kolegas. Tai gerbiama Radvilė, dėl minimalios algos, kai vyko diskusijos, tai aš norėčiau ją praneš, gal jie nežino, kad Lietuvos BVP vienam žmogui yra 80% Europos Sąjungos vidurkio.
87.
Jau net 87. Matot. O darbo užmokestis Lietuvo vidutinis yra 60. Gal pasikeitė kažkiek. Tai šitas skirtumas yra labai didelis ir mažina visos šalies konkurencingumą. Nes tuos specialistus, kurių reikia Lietuvai, mes atiduodame konkurentams ne tik Airijoje, bet ir Europos Sąjungai nepriklausančiai Jungtinei karalystei. Tai čia atsakymas pramoninkam, kodėl nieks nenori dirbti inžinieriais, nes atlyginimai yra nekonkurencingi. Europos Sąjungos rinkos mes veikiam erdvėje. Ir aš manau, kad pramoninkai tikrai gali mokėti daugiau. Ir gerbiamas Gudas vienąsyk pasakė, kad 100 000 lengvasis automobilis įmonėje nėra prabangos dalykas. Tai tikrai gali mokėti daugiau. Ačiū.
Thank you for your two questions and comments, Roberta.
Okay.
Did you get the questions?
I think so.
Okay, the first question I can reiterate was what's the situation at the European Parliament concerning the minimum wage, and the second, when will the European Parliament introduce or contribute introducing pollution taxes for the third countries which import or export to the European Union countries polluted production, not non-green production, like for instance electric energy. Yeah.
Okay, so how much time do I have?
5 minutes.
Okay.
If it's possible, because we have like 10 minutes all together.
Okay.
Or you can take it all and then we just wrap a day.
I wrote everything. Okay. I'm listening to myself, sorry. I wrote everything and I'm trying to go through them. So I start with the representative of the youth organizations. He left. Okay, but it's all right. I mean, I think he made really important points. First of all, common health policy, that has to include mental health. That, I mean, the pandemic has really pushed us as political representatives to discuss more about the real impact of the mental health of our children. People who have been at home, women who have been disproportionately affected by the pandemic. Their return to work is even harder and have been, let's say, not able to do the same pace of work simply because for a long time they were at home with the children. That is a situation that we have had to, we will need to make up for. Because it will be felt, and we are being very much pressured to do something about that. Free internships is a very good idea, and I hope Radvile is still listening to this, because I have a system of internship in my office where I get young students or anybody who comes and spends 1 week, 2 weeks, a little bit more in my office just to learn. That's how I got into the European Parliament, just to run around at the time. Jean-Luc Dehaene a long time ago in order to learn a little bit about the EU and to answer one of the questions, become interested in working for the European Union or even run for elections. I mean, being in politics is I think the best mission that one can have. And I mean, looking at the way people look at politics today, I think our aim should be, if you believe in something, if you want something to change, you run and you get elected to do that. If not, be involved at different levels, as Radvile said, also in order to push for your representatives to effect change. So that's in relation to the first point. Radvile also mentioned the program of cancer. That was a topic that mattered to everyone. Wherever we went, we were told, yes, please, what can the EU do? Many things, not only throw money at it, make sure that there's enough research that is being done, make sure you equip our universities with enough people teaching and giving space for the possibility for our students to continue to study and not necessarily have to leave university early because they cannot afford to continue to study. This was another issue that we discussed in a lot of member states. The education remains free, also at tertiary level, but are we making sure that there is enough help for those students to continue to study for as long as possible in order to find and discover the innovative solutions that we have? And there, private sector, we see it in the US, is crucial. But in the EU, there's less of, let's say, of interaction between the public sector and private sector for a mutually beneficial, ultimate resolution. But I give you an example. We are being approached at the moment by representatives of organizations that are pushing for more funds to go to pediatric cancer. Why? Because more money is spent for older generation. Pediatric cancers are rarer, difficult to treat, very fatal, but it's not in the interest of pharmaceutical companies to put money there because the numbers are not economically feasible. Where does the balance tilt? What are governments doing? What is the incentive for private industry to put money in order to take the first hit in terms of economic finances, and then be able to put something on the market that can save so many victims. In terms of demographics, this was quite, and I'll get to I will finish with the human rights, not because it's number 6 or number 7, but I want to dedicate this specifically on what you said.
Five minutes altogether left.
Okay. But so demographics.
Grab them all.
I'll do that.
Yeah, sure.
So demographics, brain drain. Biggest issue. Are we still losing people? Post-Brexit, people have come back. Are we harnessing the talent that they learned in the UK? Also, a lot of people from this country are coming back from the United Kingdom in a post-Brexit scenario. Are we making sure that what they learned there, they brought it back, and are they investing here? This is also in the post-pandemic world. Biggest shortage in the service industry. Before, it was easy for people to come into Europe from third countries. Now, they all left because of the pandemic. They're not yet back. Are we equipped as a market to be able to bring them in and address the skill shortages that we have? On the EU level, we have adopted the Blue Card Directive for highly skilled, not as high as they used to be, but highly skilled, like Canada has done, you know, identified gaps and filled them. Some countries said, well, but I have a better system, so I keep my own. But some countries had no system, so this will help them in order to facilitate legal migration in a way, but which comes with a targeted employment scenario for the 30,000 free gaps. On EU legislation, let's talk about minimum wage, but also a particularly Lithuanian issue, logistics. There are currently 13 EU member states, including yours and mine, that have taken the European Commission or are instituting legal action before the Court of Justice on transport. Why? Because there was a big division between the countries where the drivers of trucks come and the companies where the trucks are based. This was, of course, sold as an environmental legislation, but it could also be argued that this was basically cutting off it's very, very heavy, let's say, big employment in Romania, Bulgaria, my country, Lithuania, Latvia, Poland, from being able to compete competitively, not only to transport goods efficiently, but also to allow a proper internal market and free movement of workers. This is, again, votes in the Council, but these countries have finally got together and are quite organized, actually, in order to say that this has a disproportionate effect on the operation of a country in the internal market. And this will be a test case, I think, and we're all looking at it. On the minimum wage, it's currently being discussed in the Employment Committee. Biggest issue, what we call in-work poverty. So, in other words, people who have a job, but have no access to anything else because they're not secure. They can't get a house loan. They can't open a bank account. They will never be able, what is a priority for many countries still, to own your own property. You know, to actually have that stability for your children. Still a priority for a lot of people. Talking about family measures. You know, certain states in certain parts of Europe are saying, let's give incentives for people to come live here. Better schools, cheaper housing. This has to be able to be at the center of our policies when we're trying to reinvigorate our societies that are feeling like they are pushed back. On pure pollution heavy and pollution payers, yes, I think the ideas for the Just Transition Fund, but also the Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism will be aimed at trying to cushion the blow and also imposing extra tariffs on anything coming from outside. But imagine you are a country that imports energy from another European country, but that European country imports energy from a third country with a much more polluting energy source. Who pays? The end consumer or the producer or the the place where the fuel is sold. It still has to be discussed. I will answer the human rights point, and then I will end with a positive anecdote. Okay, and I cannot forget. Don't let me forget it. So,
Ray.
On human rights, we discuss a lot. The Parliament is king of discussions. So many resolutions. Every time we go to Strasbourg, we know we have 10, 11 resolutions, all of them extremely well drafted, very welcomed by the situation we are addressing. We meet 1 month again, 1 month later, let's do another one, because we'll say something different, but sometimes we say more or less the same thing. Where is the political weight of the European Union? And this is where I want the Parliament to be much stronger. I think that the Parliament, with all its legislative but also political power, we pride ourselves. We are the directly elected institution. You tell us when you vote for the European Parliament, I want you to do more on this. I don't want to wait 5 years before you come again for my vote, for you to tell me, yeah, we talk all the time about it. So I understand. I think on Belarus, the European Union was much faster than it usually is. The language used has been good. One question, what else has been done? Border guards, but also NGOs are deployed at the border. And that's why I'm going to go there to see it now in a couple of hours. A significant amount of financing has been given, 36 million euros. But of course, there's also the situation that Lithuania has not had to address this challenge before. So what happens physically with the people? Where do they go? Who houses them? Where are they? Who feeds them, etc. These are, my country had to learn that immediately on entry into the EU. And in fact, the EU skeptics used the fact that migrants had already started to arrive as the reason why they were against my country joining the European Union. That was one of the first campaigns we needed to argue against and push back against. Last story. How do we give and make sure that our young people have jobs? I give you one really positive story about Lithuania.
Is that this anecdote?
As an anecdote.
Okay, good.
Okay?
Yeah,
How many
sure.
minutes? 1 minute. I'll be 1 minute.
Take your time.
This anecdote, only one. So when the Parliament in March 2020 shut down, our Parliament, everybody went home and said, what are we going to do? We have all these laws we need to legislate, all the discussions we need to have, but we don't have any technological platform to do it. Because unlike American platforms, that there was a decision not to use that for privacy and data reasons, but also we speak in so many different languages. So there were some disastrous first days when everybody was going, can you hear me, can you see me? That lasted actually a couple of months, but in any case. But the Parliament needed to make a choice. We need to find a European company that can provide a platform for us. All these hundreds of thousands of meetings and speeches and votes online that can be taken in different languages. They issued a tender. Do you know who won it? 3 Lithuanian university students. 3 that had just been testing in Lithuania a program for this to be offered commercially. They were in no way ready, right, to do this. They traveled to Brussels, set up the infrastructure. We now use a Lithuanian platform that everywhere else in the world are asking for it. What is this company? We would like that system in the African Union in different parts of the world, because these 3 students saw that this could happen. And they did it. And now we speak in all the languages. There are no hitches. They have inbuilt programs. You can do polls. You can have multiple views, etc. It was just an idea. And they were in the right place at the right time. Nobody thought, which country? Is it big? Is it small? Are they far away? Are they close? They did it.
What is the name of the company?
I can't remember, but it's Interactio. Interactio is the platform, but the company ownership is different. Interactio is the company. So you should meet these guys and, you know, help them also and make sure that they prove to be an example to so many young people who want to make a change. It starts with a little bit, and look at that now.
Okay. Thank you, Roberta. Thank you, Radvile, who I hope is still online. No applause yet. I have to line up all the people, whom we should thank. Thanks for the Bureau of the European Parliament who has organized all the speakers, Cornelius, Vytis, Mantas, who were in the panel, and of course, thanks our two wonderful interpreters who made us all understand. So let's give applause now then. Thank you.